Hello everyone, welcome back. So in our last episode, we implemented the backend section for our hard money process. And now we're going to focus on implementing the front end section. So first thing first, let's create a new user. All right, so our user is created successfully. Now let's log in. All right, cool. So we are logged in now. And because we don't have a username, we have to fill in one. So here we can have it. All right, great. So we have it in that manner. So the next thing we want to do is to come back to our accounting and actually implement some of this. So at the moment, we do not have any account, and this is what our button looks like. We can quickly correct that. So if we try to locate our add account within the components, so this would be within the accounts. Here is the add account button. So what we can do is we can try to locate the account card and take a look at the step. So the padding is the main controller, so we don't really have a specific height. So technically, maybe you want to define a height, that would be okay. However, since we didn't have that initially, we can ignore that. So we can come back to the accounts, locate the add account button, which is this. So I can just give it a quick class, add account. And I'll just give this a small height. So it's within the accounts, I believe. So here I can have add account and give it the height of 100 pixel. Maybe that's too much. I don't know, but let's see what we have now. Well, that doesn't look like the location. Let's trace it out. So it's actually within the account. So that should work. Yep, that should work. The account and add account. Yep, yeah, that actually worked. I don't know why it didn't reload. So this looks fine. However, when we add an account and the height is now integrated, it might change this a little bit, but that's not an issue. So the major reason why we are here is to implement the add money button. And at this point, since we don't have any account, we shouldn't be able to even utilize this button. So we want to only show this button if we have account, and we can easily set that up. Coming back to the accounts, and here we can say accounts.length is greater than 0 and the add account button, or rather that's not actually what we want. So I will remove this. So take this down to the add money button here, and we'll replace this here. So because I have a formatter, I can just put my stuff anyhow I want, and I can just click format document and things will be in shape. So let's see what it looks like now. So now we don't have that button because we don't have an account. So from the screen now, the only process we can carry out is either to add an account or send money. Again, we don't have an account, so we shouldn't be able to send money. So the same thing, we can have that control. So instead of having the same thing here, we can just have this within an empty tag or a React fragment. So like this. So we can now have both of them. All right. So now on the screen, the only action we can perform is to add an account. And anybody that comes here realizes that, okay, I need to add an account to actually do anything else. So let's add an account. So the payment gateway we'll be using to perform our authorization is going to be Paystack, which is available to us here in Nigeria. And it only accepts some currency, which Great Britain pound is not one of them. So because of that, we are going to remove the Great Britain pound as one of the accounts we can add or create. So let's quickly do that. Coming back to the add account, let's remove this. So now with that removed, if we come back here, we only have these two and we can work with that. So let's create an NGN account first and work with that. So another thing I noticed is in regards to how we've implemented our modal. And because of that, we saw how the modal and the notation was not really in sync. So I think we can quickly improve what we have with our modal and remove all the complexities we've introduced in the past. So I'll quickly go over that. So coming back to the use Modal. So first thing first, I want to remove this Modal state toast container. We are not going to need that. Again, I want to remove this dispatch information. Those are complexities that are not really necessary. We can just work on a better flow. So as a result of this, look at the amount of content we have to remove. All right, so we've done the first part. So the next part is to introduce the type to our useRef. And in this case, it's going to be HTML, div elements like that, or a null. And by default, this is going to be a null. So that means I'm going to change this to a div. And the same thing here. Okay. And finally, I'm going to bring this within here. So we're going to have more of the control within our body. So as a result of that, we're going to change how we are making these calls. We are going to get to that later on. So after making these changes, we want to come back to our CSS to update things. So we can come back to the dialog here. And we can move this within the Modal body itself. I think the name is Modal dialog. I think you can still maintain that, but we'll move this in. And we are going to change this from dialog backdrop to and before. So we're just adding the before context here. And we're going to maintain the blur information. However, we want to add some positional information. So here we're going to have the content. The content is important because we are dealing with it before. So we have the top 0, everything 0. So let me just quickly run through that. All right, so that's about that. And next, I want to add a show class here. So and.show. And all this is doing is going to set the display to a block display. So by default, the display is going to be none. So it's not showing by default. So next, I want to target my body and .body. And in here, I want to set the position to be relative so that it can be on top of the before class. Then I'm going to copy most of what we have here. So background, everything. I'm going to copy it and paste here. So because the before is working with a positional information, we can set the positional information for this to as relative. It won't be necessary because what we have within our before is a fixed position. So setting this relative wouldn't matter, but it just makes sense to have it as a relative position. So this border none would not be necessary. And I think this should work. So now based on the updates within our CSS, we can come back here and do whenever I want to show the modal, we want to have modal ref.current, then .class list, then .add class. So the class we are adding is the show class. And we are going to revert that for our close modal. So this is going to be removed. So yeah, that's what we want to work with. And as a result of that, we are going to update the add account. So whenever we're done adding accounts, instead of all this set timeout and all, I can just call this function. Okay, the same thing for send money. And one thing I noticed also is the height of this does not match with this. So we can adjust that. If we come back to the CSS, first let's locate the class. That's accounts, add accounts, and let's find the CSS. So instead of just setting this as the height, we can set it as the minimum height. So that means it's going to have a minimum height, but if we have the account itself, then it's going to take the remaining height. So let's check it out. And now we have it as better as this. And because we have accounts now, we can either add money or send money, which makes more sense. So because we've updated our modal, we can just remove all the initial structure we have in regards to it. So we can come back to our store provider. Now we don't need this action any longer. All right, so for modals, we are good on that note. So let's come back to our browser to actually test this flow now. So let's add an account. Okay, it looks like our Modal is now dropping than usual. We can easily adjust this, but that's not a big deal. So I'm going to add the USD account now and submit. And as you can see, everything is much more smoother now. So yeah, that's what we're going to work with for now. So the next thing we want to do is to actually add our money. And like I said, we're going to be making use of Paystack. We don't need to go about the documentation. It's actually quite straightforward what we need to do. So we'll come back to our code. We want to install a package, which is going to make our life very easy. So here we can have yarn add react-paystack. So now that we have that installed, we want to create a hook for the flow we want to achieve. So here we're going to have use paystack.tsx. So from our just install package, we want to import a hook. So we're going to have import, then an object from React Paystack. And the hook we want to import is going to be use Paystack payments. Okay. And next, I'm going to define my test public key, because to actually use this, you have to set up your business within Paystack, and you are going to generate a live key or test key. So in this case, what you are required to have is your public key. So either the test or the live key. But since we are testing, I'm going to work with the test key. So I can define that as const test public key. Let's do that. And in here, I can specify my key. But because this is going to be a key, it's advisable to have this within your React environment. So I'm going to create an environmental file. So .env. And here I can have next_public. And here I'm going to have tests public. Or rather, let me just call it Paystack public key. And again, it's going to be equals to public key. Okay. So now to get access to it here, we can have process.env. The name we've defined. This. Okay. So now we have access to our public key by doing this. So the next step we want to do is to define some interface we are going to work with. So more like the types we want to work with. So for this, I'm going to have a currency type, and I'm going to export it because I'm going to use it in other places. So we have export type currency. So in this case, it's going to be either USD or NGN, which is what we want to work with. Then also I can define an interface for the parameters we are expecting. So here again, I can have export interface. And for this, we need an amount, which is going to be of type number. And we need a currency, which is going to be of type currency. So now we can define our hook. So const use Paystack is going to be equals to this. So I'm going to deconstruct it like this. Now we can have access to the amount as well as the currency. So another information that Paystack requires is the email of the person making the transaction. And we can easily get that by accessing the active user. So we can do that by having const. We want to get state there. And here we can have use contests. And here we can have store. I'm pretty sure we know that we can improvise on this. So we're going to get to that later on. But for now, let's get access to the data, or the states, then the active user. So with this, we'll be able to get access to the active user email address. So now we're going to make use of this hook and create a new transaction instance. So here we're going to have const init transaction, like that. So here we're going to have use Paystack payments. Then we're going to define some information. So the email address is going to be the active user.email. But because this can be optional, we have to force it. So we can say as string. So this is us forcing it. Then here we can have the amount, which is the same thing as the amount. However, in Paystack, we have to convert the amount to the lowest denomination. And since we are working with USD and NGN, we have to multiply our amount by 100. So we can have amount multiplied by 100. So next we can specify the currency, and we need the currency because we are dealing with multiple accounts. So the currency is quite straightforward. And next we can specify the public key, which we've defined already, which is test public key. So one more thing I want to add is the label, which is maybe Fingreat payments. You can just add that. Yep, so according to this, the test public key could be undefined. Again, we want to force it because we expect it to be defined. So yeah, we have that. So for the label, we can just call it Fingreat payments. So if we do not specify this label, it's going to show the email address of the person making the transaction. But it just makes sense to specify the label. So Fingreat payments, like that. And after doing all this, we want to return this instance. So we want to return it within an object init transaction. Okay? And finally, we want to export use Paystack as default. Okay? So if you're wondering, we're only returning one information here. So why can't we just return it directly? So we can return it directly. In this case, it works. However, if you are working with a hook, your custom hook in this case, it's always better to return it as an object. In case in the future you decide to add some adjustments, you can easily send more information without breaking the existing change. However, let's say you returned it as just a single value and not as an object, and you want to return multiple information in future. That means you have to change things a little bit, which can break what you have in existence. So this is just something I thought I should ship in. So we have this now. The next thing is to actually define the component for our add money. And we can just make use of the send money. So I'll duplicate this and rename this to add money. So I'll make some changes here. So here, this is going to become add money type. And again, you might be wondering, this type is the same thing as the send money. Why can't we just use the same thing? Again, it might look the same, but in case in the future you want to make some adjustments, you don't have to consider what you have within send money. You can just make your adjustments here directly. So next, let's get the type here and change it. Again, this becomes add money. And finally, our export is going to be add money. So in regards to this, we don't need these parts. However, this is going to be to account. So which account are we adding the money to? Okay. And again, this is going to be come to account ID. Because again, we are just going to need the same information just like we need when we want to send money. So the amount also remains the same. Actually, I think this should be submitting. So we can have this like this. All right, so that's just a quick adjustment. So next, we want to make some additions. So because we've adjusted our modal control, we don't need it dispatch here, so we can remove it. However, if you take a look at our use Paystack, we are sending the amount and currency as soon as we define our hook. However, if we come back to the add money, we don't have the information at the moment. We have to impute it before we can send it. So based on that note, we want to create a state to store those information, and we're going to send it later on. So what I mean in essence is we're going to have a state, so const, and here we're going to have use state, and the type of my use state is going to be my Paystack type. So my Paystack props. So on that note, we are going to have an initial value. So for the initial value, amount is going to be 0 because amount is expecting a number, and the currency is going to be either USD or NGN. Actually, I think this should be NGN. Okay, let's use NGN as default. So yeah, this is the initial structure. So next, we can now initialize our use Paystack. So we can have const. We're going to get an object at the end of the day. And here we can have use Paystack. Like that. And in here, we want to specify the amount, which is going to be data. Oh, okay. We've not defined the information. So this should be data, then set data. So on that note, we can have data.amount, then the currency, which is going to be data.currency. Okay, looking cool, right? So we want to adjust our onSubmit a little bit. So contrary to what we have before where we perform the whole operation here, we are going to have the onSubmit pull up our Paystack console. So once we are done with the console, when we verify the payment, we are now going to perform sending our request to the backend. So on that note, we probably need to just remove all this and just create a separate function. I'll call this const complete. And it's going to be an async function. And it's going to expect a response information from Paystack. But we don't know the structure of that response. So I'm just going to have this as res, or rather, let me call it response of type any. Even though it's type any, we have some expectation from the response anyways. And now we can put this in here. So moving forward, in here, we want to have our init transaction. That's if we've obtained it. Yeah, we've not. So this should be init transaction. And now we can call it init transaction. So when working with the hook from Paystack, we can call this function with our sources and our close as seen here. So this is the callback. Technically, this callback is showing empty. I think this is probably an issue from the package itself, but this should expect a response. It should not be empty. I'm going to bypass that by false, kind of. Then we have the onClose. So we come back here. We have set loading to be true here. So technically, this is what we would have done if we could send the information here directly. But because we have to send the information through here, we have to adjust things a little bit. So instead of making the init call here, we are just going to update our data. So I'm going to remove this from here. Instead, we are going to get access to the amount. So const amount equals to pass float into not e.target, but from, let's confirm the ref. Yeah, that's from dot current. So if current exists, we can get the to account ID from it. Actually, we need the amount value in this case. So amount.value. So yeah, we are passing the information here. Then the next one is the currency, but based on our definition here, we can't access the currency directly. We can only access the ID, but we can use the ID to get the currency itself. So here we can have const currency, which is equals to from, or rather, we would have accounts. So remember, we have access to the accounts here, dot find, so we can find. And we have access to the account.id. We convert it to string, Then it's equivalent to e.target. No, we actually have form.current. Again, we check if it exists. Then to account ID. Then .value. So after getting the account, now we can get the currency part. But the currency in this case is an account type, not a currency. We can adjust that though. But in a case where we have situations like this and we want to force it to the type we want, we can convert this to as unknown because we can't convert it directly to the currency type. So we have to convert it to an unknown first. Then we convert it to the currency type. Well, you shouldn't be able to do this in a good programming language, but JavaScript allows you, or more like TypeScript allows you, because JavaScript just allows anything. So now we have our account, or rather our currency in this case. And now we can set data into amount and currency. Okay? So this is looking good without any error. So now you'll be wondering, can't we just set the data and make it call to our init transaction? If you have worked with React well enough, you realize that this is an async process. So contrary to what we have when we were still using the class-based components, where the set state is more like a promise. So being a promise means you can just have .then. So it means once the operation is complete, then you can perform whatever operation you want to perform. You don't have that with this, okay? So as a result of that, we have to rely on use effect to know if the state has changed or not. So on that note, we can come here and define a use effect. And the use effect is going to listen to data change. However, it's only going to initialize the transaction if there is a change within the amount. That is, if the amount is not 0, because by default, the amount is 0. So the only reason why there will be a change in amount is if we actually click on submit, because that's the only time we're actually setting the data. So we can check if data.amount is greater than 0, okay? Anyways, we can't add a 0 amount in the first place, so that's just a valid check. So if that's the case, then we can init transaction. So as you can see from init transaction, this is meant to be a callback, but like I said, this is meant to actually have a response information. So on that note, I'm going to define a temporary function, so I can have const. Temp is going to be any type, so it means it's just anything. And it's going to be a function that takes in res of type any. And this function is going to call on completes. So on completes with the res information. So now I can send this temp as the function here, and there won't be any issue. Okay? Also, we need to specify an unclose. It's not compulsory, but I think we can make use of it because at this moment, we have set loading to true. So in case we stop the flow and maybe there is something we want to adjust, we can just set loading to false. So here we can just call a function that set loading to false. Okay. So now on this note, we are going to have access to our response. So for now, let's just see what the response looks like and not do anything. So we comment this out and console log the response. Okay, let's take a look. Let's refresh. Oh, okay, I think we need to start our server first. So yarn dev. Okay, our server is up and running, and let's try again. All right, so our account has expired. Let's log in again. Let's go to accounting. So we have 2 accounts. Let's add money. Okay, we've actually not implemented that part, and that should be quite straightforward. So if we come back to accounts, we can close this for now. Now we can add an extra enum. So this is going to be add money. And also we can extend this. So modal state.add money. This is going to be add money. And we don't have to do any other thing. So finally, we can create one more function. I think it's just better to have the functions like this. It's much more cleaner. But if you want, you can create a single function and pass your parameter. That still works. So you have any way you want. So this is going to be add money, and this is going to be add money. So that means we can come here and add an onClick function. And this is going to be add money. All right, so that's all we need to do to enable that. So let's click now. So we have add money. So we're still going to fix this modal that is coming down later on. At least it's not scrolling. So here we are going to specify the account we want to add money to. So either NGN or USD. Then we can specify the amount. So if we click submit without specifying anything, it's going to request for it. So we can specify 300 here, and we submit. And voila, as you can see, is bringing up the Paystack flow. And as you can see, here is the label, and this is the payment, which is kind of valid to what we want. So we can close this, and as you can see, it removes the loading. So we can change this to a USD, and we can submit again. And now this is going to be USD, which looks good. So at the end of the day, we want to take a look at the response. So let's take a look. So I can just click success because this is a test and pay. So here's the response. So we have the message approved. So it's approved immediately because, yeah, it's just a test. There's no need to check. So we need the reference, like I said, and we need the status. So this reference is what we'll be using to verify in a case where we are working with a public process and the flow is not immediate. So we need to verify if the transaction is successful or failed or anything like that before we actually credit the account. So yeah, that's just it. So we need the reference and the status. So based on that, we are going to come here, come back to the add money, and define our argument. So our argument in this case can be a const because we are not changing it. So the total account ID is going to be there, and I think this is valid. And here we're going to have the reference, and the reference is going to be response.reference. Then also we can specify the status, and the status is going to be response.status. So in case of the amount, is going to come from what we've defined already. So we've converted this already. So here we can just have data.amount. So remember, this is a converted amount, and that works well. So next we can uncomment this. So transfer successful, more like transaction successful. So let's call it transaction, okay, in this case. So all we need to do now is to define the add money URL. So we can just come here, create a new URL. So this is add money. And the endpoint here is add dash money, like that. So if we come back here, we have this. We can change this to add money. Our argument still remains. We don't need the console log again. We've verified what we need to verify. And yeah, that's everything we need to do. Let's test this out now. So let's refresh. Let's close this. So let's add money. So I want to add money to my NGN account. I want to add 1,000. And if this were to be a live process, it's going to show you different methods through which you can add money. So it can either be through your card or a bank transfer or any ways. But this is a test, so we can just test success or whatever we want to. So here we can have success and we pay. And as we can see, we get our account back with the updated balance. Also, let's send money to our USD account. So maybe after we are done sending the money, we can just clear our inputs. We can just use the form ref to clear our inputs. I think we can do that. Let's confirm. So once we are done with the process here, we can just do form.current.reset. So we have to check if this exists first. Okay. So let's confirm if this is working. Let's refresh. So let's add money to our USD. Let's add 50,000 USD. So again, as you can see, it's validated here and we can pay. Okay, we have to choose a form that will pay. Okay, so it doesn't look like there was an error. Let's try to send money. So as you can see, it was reset. That's cool. So on this note, we are done with adding money. And based on that, we can add money, we can send money, we can add an account. What is left now is to actually see our transaction history, which we are going to get to in the next episode. So in the next episode, we are going to be doing more like a general cleanup. So here we can format this to look better and we can get our account information. And with that, we probably will be able to close the accounting section. So yeah, guys, there you have it. If you enjoyed the episode, kindly leave a thumbs up. Share your experience with me on the comment section. And I'll see you in the next episode. Bye for now.